Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hey, it's hump day. How fitting for this conversation. So I'm wondering out there, is there anybody out there who is struggling in the bedroom during this time of menopause or perimenopause? That is what we are here to talk about today. We are here to talk about why you are experiencing this disconnect in the bedroom. You might be wondering, is it your hormones? Is it your relationship? Is it menopause? Is it the quote unquote, as Kemby lent us this phrase, perimenopausal purgatory? We're not sure. But what we want to do today is have a conversation to start normalizing this phase of life for all of you incredible women so that it's no longer a problem for you. So I am going to invite my two guests to briefly introduce themselves and share your thoughts on some of these problems. What have you seen? What have you experienced yourself? What have you seen and worked on and helped your clients with before we dive all the way into this conversation? I'm going to invite Kemby to go first just because her name is alphabetically first. So
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Kemby Bacon, and I am a naturopathic doctor since 2005. Women's health has always been my specialty. And about 3 years ago, I started this transition to online coaching where I am working exclusively to help perimenopausal and menopausal women through this crazy journey that we're on so that they can look and feel like themselves again. I hear over and over and over again that women are just feeling like, I knew who I was for so long. Like I knew what made me tick. This applies in this, of course, in this discussion today about sex and libido, but also in all these areas, right? Where it's like I knew what worked and I knew, what made me feel good, and now like everything is all thrown up in the air. And so um, I can kind of help guide them through so that they can look and feel like themselves again by optimizing sleep, moods, hormones. That's what I do. And I love it.
amazing. Well, thank you so much for that quick intro. I'm going to throw it over to Lex to introduce herself and add your thoughts to this introduction of this. I know this is going to be a really juicy conversation. So don't dive all the way in yet, Lex. We got to save some for a little later on.
Hey, I'm Lex Bucco. I have been in fitness and health industry for over 20 years now. I owned a fitness studio, and that's where a majority of my clients, like 99% of my clients, were women. So I would hear things here and there, and maybe in me, I would always do research and learn more and learn about nutrition and hormones and things like that. And then I'm in my 40s now, and because of my friends and acquaintances, most of my friends and acquaintances are in their 40s and 50s and so on. And I started hearing patterns. And what I do as a coach, I help people with sleep, hydration, overall health, stress management, meditations, like you name it, anything that comes to health. And then through that, I noticed that women would start feeling better, and they would say they would think clearer, they would feel better, their mood would be better, they would not be irritable. So then I started looking into hormones, and then I kind of fell in love with the whole women's health. And I focus on overall health, which makes hormones such a big part of it because it's such a topic that has not been talked about in Western medicine forever. And I think it's about time that we have our voices and speak up and have women feel normal and know what's normal and what's not, and know when they're being gaslighted and what they can do to take charge of their health to feel normal again.
Amen. And in case you're watching and we haven't met yet, my name is Christy Holt, and I call myself the Happiness Hussy. I'm on a mission to spread happiness all across the world. And I am a podcast host, I am an author, and I am a mentor. And today I hope you will join me as your happiness and love guide for this conversation. I am really hoping that this conversation will help you to shake up things, not just in the bedroom, but in all areas of relationship and life, and truly spark a transformation, starting with the information that you have today. Essentially, I want to empower you to grab life by the lady balls and create a life and love that makes you truly fucking happy. So, you're not sleeping, you're gaining weight, Sex does not feel as good as it used to. Things are drier than the Sahara, but you don't need to settle for any of that. So there are many options out there to help you with some of these challenges. But today's conversation is much more about getting to the root cause of the challenges rather than slapping some band-aids on the symptoms, right? And so we ultimately are here because we don't want you to be part of the menopause suffering club at all. We want to help you find some freedom. Am I right, my sisters?
Yes.
Yes.
So understanding what's really going on, like really getting to the root of the thing, is what actually gives us the ability to make a change. What we don't know, we can't change, right? So this is the point of this conversation, is to get a little bit of clarity about what is really going on. Because once you can see that root problem, you're empowered. And so that is what the next piece of our conversation is going to be all about. We are ready to let go of any of those useless limiting beliefs and expectations and shoulds. And we are ready to step into our amazing power as women, right? We are amazing. We have incredible gifts. We have incredible abilities to intuit things and really feel deeply. And often we go through life shutting that off. And it's not your fault if you've done this. So many people, men and women alike, have been living in survival mode. Honestly, there's so much information coming at us from every direction. It's no wonder we're burnt out and exhausted. So let's talk a little bit, ladies, and we're going to do this popcorn style. So feel free to hop in, whatever you have, something on your mind to share. Let's talk about managing the symptoms versus the root cause, and how we can really uncover that root cause so that we can not just manage the symptoms, but eliminate them.
I guess I'll just jump in.
Jump in.
I think that we've been used to managing, right? Like the whole Western medicine is managing symptoms, unless it's like, car accident or something like that, in which Western medicine is great. But everything else seems to be managing the symptoms. And most people are told it's just how it is, or they're not listened to. And when it comes to hormones, women are either given an antidepressant, told it's all in your head, oh, that's normal with aging, things like that. And again, this is without digging deeper into the root cause. So that's one of the things I wanted to jump in and say is we need to look always at the root cause. Sometimes, yes, you have to manage symptoms at first while educating yourself on what's going on in your body, because you're not like, I'm not going to deal with, I don't know, night sweats and hot flashes. I can handle managing that while looking for a root cause, right? And this is why I believe, and I'm just going to boldly state this, that 80 to 90% of women should not be on antidepressants. All of that can be managed and discovered the root cause and then handled differently. So anyway, I'll give the space to Kemby.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of elucidate a little bit the problems that women have, because when we talk about sex, we talk about libido, which is basically your sex drive or your desire to have sex. There's so many different things going on, right? And from a holistic perspective, there's the physical changes that are going on when women are in their late 30s through their late 50s, right? Lowered estrogen causes this word that makes me cringe. Vaginal atrophy just absolutely makes me cringe, right? It's like shriveling, and it's terrible. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to talk about that, because there are ways, whether they're hormonal or non-hormonal, to keep your tissues healthy, to do some things that help physically. So there's the physical aspects of change that are happening. And often women, it's like we don't feel good in our skin. We're a little uncomfortable with our body, with the changes going on, and how to kind of how to advocate for ourselves and how to optimize how we feel. But then there's all the emotional stuff. There's the energetic stuff, right? There's when women are usually 95% of my clients, myself included as my first client, really have this, we're depleted. Either we've been caretaking, we're, moms, we maybe we're givers in our community in general or in our profession, and we just feel we're overstimulated, like we already kind of talked about. We're kind of maxed out already. So the last thing we want to do is add one more thing to our to-do list, and when sex feels like a chore, feels like a something that's emotionally like draining for us, and we haven't had the self-care and the things that make us feel desirable and all of that, that's a big problem too, right? So it's like we have the low libido sometimes just because we're not taking care of ourselves, right? And the last thing we want to do is give more sometimes. And so, when I explain that to women and kind of like let them off the hook, so to speak, of like, you should be, whatever, your libido should be strong. It's like, well, of course it's not. Of course it's not when you're physically, emotionally, energetically drained. And so, a lot of this conversation is going to be about separating the problems, right? Because there's several different kind of problems or things going on as we're shifting into this new phase of life and menopause. And the root cause, when we look at it holistically, is not only physical changes, but it's the emotional, energetic as well.
And if I can add to that also, like in our 20s, it's not just that we have so much more energy, it's that we are willing to do things for other people. Like a lot of us have been brought up to be nice and to be people pleasers and to give, right? And I heard this lady recently say something about relationships she was talking about, and she said, generally through society in relationships, about when it comes to men, it's about what they get out of a relationship, and as for a woman, it's about what she gives. And it kind of made me think of this conversation that we're about to have, because again, it's not just that in our 20s we have so much more energy, it's that we're willing to do all these things for other people. Then you get to 30s and then even 40s and you're like, I'm not doing this for you. Like I'm a mom, fine, I'll take care of my kid. But like you're an adult. And I think that's where also a shift starts, which also goes with the hormonal change. If you listen to Dr. Amen, who's a brain scientist, he scans brains and talks about also a change in women's brain and during menopause. It's that we were caregivers for 20 years, but when we're going through later peri and menopause, our brain shifts to actually start focusing on ourselves more. We get more self-centered. And this is why you also hear more conversation about self-care starting at 35 and up, because it really is the natural shift. So if you look at the brain, even how it changes, it's to say, okay, I took care of everybody for 20 years. Now it's time for me. And a lot of times when women start talking about what is it that I want, it's that they're asking themselves for the first time in their 40s, what is it that I actually want? And it's a hard question to answer. So you're right, like that, not only that physically we're going through some changes, that mentally and emotionally, it's also going hand in hand with how our brain works as well.
Yeah, and it is both an exciting time because hello, we're entering a time where we might not have our monthly visitor every single freaking month forever. And there is a component of freedom with that. But I think also just exactly like Lex said, as you approach 40, I feel like the amount of fucks you have left to give to things is minimal. So you are just more choosy with where you hand out those fucks. And it's not that you don't give a fuck about anything. It's just that you're more intentional about what you focus on, what you prioritize, and what you give your energy to. And since, because sex is no longer about making babies, which is a primal drive that we have when we're younger, we no longer have that primal drive. We are moving into a different phase of life, and sex becomes something a little bit different. It becomes about pleasure. It becomes about connection. It can become about sex, Freudian slip. It can become about stress relief. And if we haven't allowed ourselves pleasure and connection and this stress relief in the past, this is just new, right? So as with anything new, we have to navigate it. We have to learn. We have to get more comfortable with seeing things from a different perspective. And that's not always easy at first.
Yeah, and with that, other people have to adjust too, right?
Yeah.
I always, whenever I work with my clients and they're like, I started working on me, and I'm noticing all these other areas of my life are kind of shifting too. And it's true, because we were one person, maybe not even aware of what we wanted again as women, but we get to 35, 37, 40, and we're starting to ask ourselves that question more and more. And with that question asked, expectations change, relationships can change as well. And so this is a conversation not just for women, which we're talking about, it's also if men in their lives are hopefully open enough to notice the shift and go along with it and provide more of a space for her to be herself, because maybe she hasn't been herself for 20 years. So there is a shift, and that's where I think that men have to step up to another level of maturity to recognize that and be that support. And I honestly believe this is why a lot of couples don't make it around the 40s, is because while everything is shifting, she's not willing to go back to how it was because she's discovering herself now. And with that self-discovery, there's new boundaries, there's new expectations, there's new requests. And if those requests are met, great. But if they're not, that's where I think one of the major issues comes up.
And the obligatory piece of sex too can really be a challenge when there's a lot of pressure from your partner. It really adds to the emotional distance actually between you, because first of all, nobody wants sex to feel like something they have to check off their to-do list. It's not good for either party to have it feel like an obligation that you have to fulfill to keep your partner happy, to manage their mood, or any of these things. And it puts unnecessary pressure on what is meant to be a beautiful, pleasureful experience of deeper connection. And yet, like you alluded to, things have changed. And so both people need to stay in communication about what that might look like moving forward. Kemby, your thoughts on adding into this?
Absolutely. I think the first step for women is just gaining that awareness, because there's so many, even though it's a simple thing, like there's so many different aspects to it. And it's like, if you're feeling like your sex life is not where you want it to be, kind of like taking the partner out of it for a moment, to kind of ask yourself, like, are you uncomfortable in your body? Is your confidence struggling? Like, is it a physical thing going on where it's uncomfortable or it's painful, or it's like looking at all these different things and really asking not only what do I want and what do I need, but like what's the disconnect for me, or what is it that I want that I'm not getting? Maybe sex is, separated from connection. Maybe that's not what you're craving. Maybe there's all these different things, but I think the first step in supporting yourself, advocating for yourself, talking to your partner, if you have a partner, sharing what it is that would help you move the needle in your sex life, and in your expression of who you are, is really having that awareness of like, where am I not getting my needs met, or where am I not really finding that passion?
Yeah, and what's really going on within you underneath the symptoms. And today in the world, we tend to want to avoid looking below the surface because it's uncomfortable. And so this is a call to look below what appears, right? What is obvious, and really, dive deep within yourself to figure out what's really going on. Are you concerned about the changes in your body? Is that, causing you to feel uncomfortable, like can be mentioned? Are you thinking about your to-do list and all the things that you need to do? Is your mind somewhere else? Are you worried that maybe you're taking too long and that your partner is getting bored of you? Maybe you're just wanting more adventure, more spice in your life, but you're not sure how to speak up. And a lot of these things we might not want to look at right square in the face because it can be uncomfortable. And again, anything new is uncomfortable. So just bearing that in mind, the first time that you started, doing anything new, walking was challenging. And so what you did was you kept trying, right? You tried again and you fell down and you tried again. And so as with anything in life, you have to just be willing to keep trying, especially if something is really important to you. But having that clarity of what is really going on within you, what it is that you really want, will help you to create that roadmap so that you can actually get from here to there, without wandering aimlessly around in the woods trying to just figure out. And it's not about that end destination. It's not about that. It's actually about the journey. And the journey is beautiful. Journey is the uncovering of who you are and what you're here to experience. And that is a beautiful opportunity. And so many people are so focused on the destination that it creates so much pressure to get to that end destination. They miss the beauty and the pleasure and the experience of getting there. So, maybe it's your mind getting in the way, maybe it's your body interfering with you, but figuring out for you, what is it for you? What sparks your fire into a massive bonfire, right? What takes that little spark and just blows it up? And recognizing that we're all different. And so not everyone has the same kind of, you know, sex drive. Not everyone has the same sorts of things that turn them on. Not everyone is going to respond to even the same person on a different day, right? Because there are so many factors that play into this. And allowing yourself some grace while you navigate this, the self-compassion to recognize it's all okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just navigating something new.
I really want to take a minute to point out just how scary this can be. Because if you feel alone and if you're asking yourself what you want for the first time and you never ask for help or anything, any of your needs up until this point, because maybe you were raised to be nice and a people pleaser, and maybe that's the kind of relationship you're in or marriage or whatever, I just want women to know it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be scared to ask yourself what I want. And it's okay because the brain, like you said, freaks out anytime a new change comes up, every time. That's how the brain works because it doesn't like the change. And especially if you lived one way for 35, 40 years, it's really scary, but it's okay to be scared and to learn to take one step in front of the other, to enjoy the journey, like you said. And we're taught in this culture, get to the goal and move on to the next goal. Set the goal, get to the goal, move on. But it's the journey in which you change and self-discover.
And truly, like the happiness or the joy or the peace or whatever we're seeking, which generally is that outcome, it's actually not just in the outcome. And if you don't learn how to create it along the way, you'll get to that outcome and you'll be sadly disappointed that, oh, that actually is just such a brief moment in the blip of time. And so the real gift is actually learning how to create it for yourself along the way so that you're not just waiting for a brief moment to experience that which you want to create for yourself, but you're able to create it for yourself consistently. Kemby, I know you got something burning to say.
Well, I just wanted to say, sometimes what I hear from women is like things that were simple or easy before, sex included, that now take more effort, take more exploration. It's like, it's disconcerting. Like Lex said, it can be scary. It can be frustrating. I hear a lot of like frustration and just like, like I've tried all these things and I still can't get there. And I'm like, okay, just like with weight loss, right? Like weight loss is stubborn as hell in your 40s and 50s, right? And for a lot of us, it was easy when we were younger, right? And so kind of like that shift of your brain to, okay, this is going to take more strategy. This is going to take some, like you said, Christy, like some exploration, some trying new things, some thinking outside the box, doing something differently. What's that quote of like, if you keep trying the same thing and it's not working, right, over and over, you have to kind of shift and try something new or try something different. And that's hard and it takes effort. And a lot of times we don't want to put in that effort, not because we don't care about our relationship, but because we're exhausted. We're physically, emotionally, energetically exhausted. And it's like, okay, this is another thing that needs fixing or needs my attention. And like you said, it can be hard to ask for help or even know where to go to get help, how to receive some support in this area, because it's not talked about. It's not something you bring to even your doctor or, you know, your different healthcare providers, right? It's not something we tend to share about, even with our friends, with our community. So a lot of times women are kind of like fumbling through the dark, so to speak, to find answers for themselves and for their relationships without any kind of roadmap and without any kind of support of like, oh, okay, this is what works, or this is what, you know, we've tried. And yeah, so I think it's really helpful to be sharing this and starting to, you know, really get women thinking, you know, having some tools for things that they can try, and also just thinking about what, you know, what's shifting and what they're needing, like we've talked about.
And, you know, one thing you just briefly touched on there is that I want to expand on is that there is not a lot of medical research done on women and on these areas. And so even when you go to the doctor, they don't totally know either, because there's just a lack of information. And so by coming together, by having these conversations, and by normalizing the things that women are experiencing, because it's not necessarily taught in medical school, not to the extent that it could be, we are giving women the ability to finally feel, I hope, seen and heard and witnessed in the experiences that they're having, to recognize, holy shit, I'm not the only one. I thought I was crazy, but I'm not. There are so many other women going through the exact same experiences that I am. And maybe when we come together and we share the stories of our experiences and the things, the solutions that we've found that have worked for ourselves, and not to say there's a one size fits all, there absolutely won't be, but it gives us opportunities to explore, to try a few different things on, to see what works for us. And it gives us just a lot more information to draw on that maybe is still a growing kind of bit of information, because there just hasn't been that much research done on it. And this, I think, allows us to set down the guilt and the shame and the embarrassment for our bodies and the things that we thought were wrong with us, the things that we thought we were crazy for experiencing, that everyone said, no, that's nothing. That can't be it. You know, we can set down that guilt and that shame and that embarrassment, and we can step into, well, like what I call the conscious creator mode, which is just intentionally seeking out our next steps, right? We're the ones that have the knowledge within us, but sometimes we need some other ideas around us to help us figure out which ones are the right ones for us. And that's okay. If it's a no, and you're like, oh, that's definitely not going to work for me. Great. That's information too. But just having the conversations is such a great starting point. And I want to say here for just a second, we need to have more of these conversations way earlier in life about women and their bodies and all of the things that we're going to go through, and sex. Like, sex is like such a taboo subject. It has been, it's been a subject of something that has to be hidden away, and it creates so much shame about something that is actually beautiful and wonderful and made for, you know, we are made for pleasure. We are made to experience this deep, intimate connection. And yet we have to navigate all of these things about sex. And I could really go down a rabbit hole, and I'm not going to for the sake of time today, but just an invitation, you know, to look at who you are, not with all of these labels of that's not normal, that's not right, but really look at who you are, your experience, and allow it to be. Because when we start to allow ourselves to just be who we are and our experiences to be what they are, without that judgment, without the labels, without the criticism of ourselves, we can start to see ways forward.
I think it's important to emphasize to have these real conversations with other women, because you mentioned earlier, or one of you mentioned, in being in a relationship, or something triggered this thought to say, oh, it was you, Kemby, who said, explore. What is it that you want? Maybe you want to do something differently in the bedroom, okay? So if women are feeling alone and they don't feel that they can have this conversation with other women, they may turn to their partner, who may be just expressing their other needs. This is why it's important to talk to other women, but it's also important to sit down and ask yourself, what is it that I want to try? Because a man is going to speak up on his needs. He may not know, because you don't even know what you want. So how would he know?
Yeah.
Maybe also the relationship has been suffering for a while, and maybe you're used to sleeping on completely different ends of the bed. So it's going to take a minute to connect again, to learn how to communicate again. And in this whole process, it really is that journey about self-love and self-discovery. And then that leads to, what are the things that I can do for me? Not even necessarily asking for help in the bedroom, but what is it that I can do for me when it comes to how I function?
Yeah.
Whether it's nutrition, sleep, hydration, thoughts, right? Like the societal, eliminating yourself from societal pressures is what I'm trying to say. And so that goes back to that self-care. It goes back to, what can I do for me? And it's not selfish to do things for myself, because now, after 20 years of doing it for someone else, most women, I feel like they're drowning and they don't know how to change things. So that solitude and conversations with other women is crucial.
Yeah, the most important relationship that we have is the one that we have with ourselves. And yet we've been taught for most of our lives that it's selfish to care for ourselves. And that as women, particularly, we are taught to be the good girl, to be the nurturer, to be giving, to be humble, essentially to be martyrs, to be people pleasers, to be someone who puts themselves last. And after potentially many decades of acting this way, your neural pathways are really pretty ground in there. It's pretty solidified that that's how you're supposed to be. And so really shifting that, looking at who you are, right? And this is one thing that I noticed when I had kids. I realized, and I stumbled for a while about who am I after I had kids. I was suffering from, I call it just symbiomitis. And that's just to say, I had my kids, I had my husband at the time, but who the fuck was I? I didn't know. I really lost track of who I was. There isn't a way to go back. You can't erase that and become, go back to who you were before you became a mother, because that changes you forever. But there is a way forward to really get to know yourself. And this is building this foundational relationship with yourself, like becoming your own best friend. Because I'll tell you what, that absolutely will ripple out and impact everything. Not just your relationship with your partner, if you have one, not just your relationship with your kids, if you have kids, but your work, your relationship with your body, your relationship with money, your relationship with the world at large, with the trolls on the internet. It's all affected, right, by the way that you feel about yourself on the inside. And so building this foundational relationship with self is, to me, is the key to really creating that outward experience that you crave.
100%. Yeah, one of the things that I say a lot to clients is, sex doesn't occur in a vacuum. And we know that everything we experience during a day, whether it's stress at work, it's, taking care of our kids all day, it's, there's all these factors that not only on a day-to-day basis, but on a month-to-month, yearly basis, we take into account, and they affect our emotional state, they affect our, desires. And, often we think it's the same, it's the same thing with sleep. We think we should just be able to flip a switch and be in the mood, or, be able to make this transition. And often transitioning from like work to home, or, to go to sleep at night, all of these things require our nervous system and our brain, our emotional state, to make this really rapid shift that sometimes is really unrealistic. And, to think, I've had a really stressful day, I'm exhausted, I didn't hydrate today, maybe I slept really poorly last night, but, maybe I have the desire, like somewhere in my mind, to connect with my partner, but it's not happening today. Like you said, getting rid of some of that, the shame, the guilt, all the things that come along with that. If I could share real quickly about a client, she came to me mostly for libido, right? For sex drive. And she was like, love my husband. Things are really good. Our relationship is really solid. And I don't have the energy for it. I have zero desire. And I was like, okay, let's look at all the other stuff, right? Because it doesn't exist in a vacuum. Let's talk about your sleep. Let's talk about your, nutrition. Like, let's go through all these things. And I was like, that's what we have to focus on, because it naturally comes back when we've taken care of yourself a little bit, when you've actually nurtured and loved on and filled up your own tank a little bit, and I use this like gas tank analogy quite a bit with my clients, right? But we all know that feeling of like when we have a full tank, when we, when our gas tank is full, when our emotional, energetic tank is full, then we're game for a lot more, whether it's going out with friends, having a sex drive. It can be anything. Our motivation, our moods are so much better when we've first taken care of ourselves. And when we have drained that and we're showing up to our relationship totally flat and we're overdoing all day long and we're still expecting ourselves to, have this desire to, go out when we're an introvert, or, have sex at 9 p.m. when we're exhausted, it's unrealistic. And so when I shared that with her and we took that journey, she was like, wow, I didn't know it was my sleep and my self-care that was going to move the needle. I thought I needed, a supplement for libido or something, a suppository or whatever it is. And I was like, those things do help. We talked about, they can be a little band-aid, but really it's all the other stuff, that like the bubble that exists around the sex experience and the libido experience that really determines where we're at.
Can
Well,
we
yeah,
can
it's
we just
amazing.
talk about the sleep, please? Because this is one thing that has been accepted as normal for women not to sleep good. And it's like, oh, I just don't sleep well. And I usually ask my clients to rate their sleep from 1 to 10. And typically people say 5 or 6, which really means they're at a 2 or a 3 when you get deep down into it. Let's not normalize lack of sleep for women. Again, this societal pressure, oh, moms never sleep, or that's just women's hormones, that's just how women are. That's not normal. And can we please just talk about good sleep, that really changes everything. Like if I didn't sleep well, I wake up the next day and I go, okay, I really have to pay attention to hydration and nutrition, and I got to pay real attention to my thoughts, because I know all of these things are going to be shifted if I don't sleep well. And when we don't sleep well, we do crave bad food because the body's just trying to find energy from somewhere. So that's where really self-love kind of gets shown, where self-love is not, I'm just gonna, eat whatever. Self-love is doing things that are good for you, beneficial for you, despite of what you feel like you should do, right? Like real parent always does things for you that you don't necessarily want to, but they make you do these things because they are better for you. It's kind of like self-parenting, healing that inner child, showing that true self-love and self-respect. Let's normalize sleep.
Yeah. And when we feel better, we make better choices. Like there is no ifs, ands, or buts around that. Like you said, we choose to move more, right? When we feel better, we want to move because it feels good in our body, and it creates this upward spiral rather than a negative downward spiral of, oh, now I ate bad food and now I feel bad about that. And then maybe we feel like, oh, like I should go to the gym and work that off. And we get in this whole state of self-loathing. Like, hello, where's our confidence when we're downward spiraling? Who knows? It's gone, right? And of course, then when you're not feeling good, that's like the least likely time that you want to strip down naked and have someone see the depths of your soul, because you're not feeling good inside. And so the better you feel inside, the more connected with yourself that you feel. And that does include good sleep, fueling your body for your needs. Listen, there's no right and wrong necessarily here. This is what's right is what works for you and makes you feel good. And I don't mean for a moment, because of course, eating crappy stuff makes you feel good for a moment, until you start the guilt and the shame and then the energy slides and all of those things. I mean, choosing things that are good for you in the long run, right? Those things that boost your energy, that make you feel more confident, more connected, more yourself. Because the better you feel, the better choices you're going to make. And it's just going to really snowball from there. When I used to do health coaching, I often spoke to people about this common thing, because people, and it's just the way things are. People think that if they want to change, they've got to change everything. And so they're like, let me go on a diet and join a CrossFit gym, and then I'm going to do yoga 17 times a week, and I'm also going to just stop. It's too much. When you try and change too many things at once, you overwhelm yourself and you end up doing probably next to nothing, because you go to CrossFit 4 times, you get injured, and then you're like, well, I can't do that anymore. You eat one thing that you shouldn't eat. And then you're back to square one, feeling like I've ruined it all. I might as well give up. I don't, does anybody else resonate with these things? Is it just me who has had these experiences? So I always used to encourage people, baby steps. What feels like that is so easy? I could do that in my sleep. Start there, right? What is one shift that you can make? Drinking a couple of extra cups of water. I'm not saying you go from 0 to 8 cups. Start with 2 if you're not drinking any water and you're living on coffee, right? Just swap out 2 cups of coffee for water. Make those baby steps so that you can actually keep going, so that you can stick with it, so that if you're in bed and you realize, oh my gosh, I forgot to do the thing, you can just do the thing, because it's easy enough that you can do it, and you can make yourself feel that much better just by taking those baby steps. And guess what? Those baby steps, all of a sudden you start feeling better. You're like, oh, dang, like I feel so much better when I do that. So then you just feel this energetic push to do just a tiny bit more. And then it grows and it grows and it grows. And before you know it, you are being that person that you want to be, that person who feels alive and energetic and passionate and good in your body. But it doesn't happen by changing everything all at once. It happens through those baby steps, those things that are manageable that you can keep on doing.
Yeah. I call this a lot with my clients. I call it building joy. And it starts again with awareness, really, where we're sometimes we've lost really that connection with ourselves, and I know we've talked about this earlier with, prioritizing our relationship with ourselves. And really that comes to, like, am I doing anything during the course of the day that feels good, that fuels me, that, or am I just like on autopilot, go, go, go? And often when you stop and ask, for me, when I ask my clients, like, what are your self-care routines, or what are your tools to, take care of yourself? They're just like, what do you mean? And that's where I was 10 years ago, where I was just like, I was full-time momming, I was full-time doctoring, right? I was doing all the things. And yet there was this disconnect of like, I can't even stop for a second to think about what I need. Like, I can't, even get off this wheel that's happening. And I know a lot of women feel that way, where it's like, they don't even really stop to think, like, which do I prefer, or what, maybe I have 10 minutes of free time. What feels better? Go for a walk, take a bath. It's like, no, I need to go do the CrossFit, or I need to go do this thing. And then I need to, and when it's a need to, and it's a have to, even if we love to do it, it doesn't build joy, and it doesn't fill our tank in the same way. So when we really take that time and think, like, what's one small thing, like you said, Christy, like, what's one baby step that could move the needle, not only in terms of my health, like, oh, maybe I choose, this food that I enjoy, and I go pick it up for lunch, but really, like, what's one little thing that I can do that boosts my happiness, that makes me feel cared for, nurtured, supported, right? And sometimes we're looking for that nurturing from our partner, and they have their own full plate, and they have a lot going on as well. And maybe they aren't giving it to us the way we want to. So it starts with us, and it really starts with us taking that, like, radical responsibility for our own needs, and saying, like, hey, I need a little time for myself before I'm ready to connect with you. I first need to connect with me, and, take some time at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day for my morning routine. Like, there's so many different ways to do it, but it's just the fact of doing it, and of taking, really having that awareness and taking that responsibility to think about ourselves, during the day, during the week, during the month, like, making sure we're getting cared for.
Yeah. And you don't
And
have
that
to do something to be worthy of that self-care. And I think that's a lot of us think like we have to earn that time. We have to be worthy of it. And you don't. You are worthy of that because you exist. And because, in fact, your worth will flow forth from your decisions to nurture yourself. And what happens when we expect other people to fulfill all of our needs? And it's not bad or wrong to ask others to help us when we have our needs and we can ask for it. But when they can't, our response is very telling. And if that's leading us to resentment, bitterness, frustration, we're outsourcing something that actually can't be outsourced. If we can learn to identify those needs within ourselves and take actions that help us to fulfill those needs on our own, or to clearly communicate what we would love to receive from another person, a partner or a friend or a parent or whoever is in our life, we will go around with a lot less frustration, resentment, right? We have to let go of the expectation that someone else is going to do it for us, because we can't do that. We can't expect that. And we can't control anybody else but ourselves. That's what the radical responsibility is about. It's taking ownership. These are my needs. How can I start meeting them, even in small ways, starting today, right here, right now, in this moment? What need is coming up for me, and what can I do that would feel most loving and nurturing to myself? Lex, I feel like you had something to say there.
Well, you talked about the small changes, right? I call that SCA with my clients. And like, if whoever's listening to this is like, just take that small, consistent action, right? Like it's exactly tying everything that we just talked about. Like, instead of going for 8 glasses of water and taking away all your sweets and eating veggies and going to the gym 5 days a week, I always tell my clients, like, basic goal like this: can I do this indefinitely? Well, I want to go to the gym every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. Are you going to do that indefinitely? Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's going to be days when something comes up. Okay, can you do 10 squats daily? Oh yeah, I can do that. Okay, do that. When it sounds so stupidly small
Yeah.
that your brain cannot talk you out of it. Once that's a habit, you can easily add on to that. And that is really not what the diet culture teaches, right? Like, the diet is like, I'm starting the diet today. No, I'm just going to drop a little bit of sugar and add 1 serving of veggies once a week for myself. So starting with small, and which is the same with what is it that I want. It's not that I need to make this huge change in my whole lifestyle and move to a different country, although that may be the answer because we travel all the time. But it may just be like, what is it that I want? Like you said, what is it that I want right now? What is it that I want today? What would make me feel good at the end of the day? Just these little small, tiny things.
Yeah, and because I'm a big fan of giving some practical action steps for listeners, we want to wrap up with a couple of ideas of things that you can actually go and do today, just in case you haven't pulled any ideas yet as to what you might do for your next tiny step. And so the one that I wanted to share was to approach the sex thing without the sexpectations, right? So this is to approach connection with your partner, or with yourself, really. It doesn't matter, right? This is about yourself. But to approach sex without that sexpectations, which means to seek the pleasure, but not the sexual outcome. So maybe it is inviting your partner, and this can be actually really fun for anybody, even if sex is good. Invite each other into an experience of non-sexual touch. Almost could be a little bit like teasing, could be just comforting touch, right? It could be a massage, again, without the sexpectation, because that really takes the pressure off. It allows you to connect on a physical level without all the pressure of having to perform. And so that is my invitation for you to explore potentially this week. If you want to spice things up, if you want to revive things in the bedroom, if you want to build that deep, intimate connection back up with your partner, maybe take sex right off the table. Give it a week. No sex. All the touching you can handle, but no sex, that's off the table. And just see if that helps you to shift, build maybe a little bit more desire, a little bit more excitement into your experience, but also start to rekindle that connection in a safer space. Because we did allude to earlier, when you have this like obligation and this pressure, sometimes it can make it feel very unsafe to say no. And actually, when sex feels like a chore or like something on your to-do list, first of all, energetically wah for both parties. Okay. That's just not going to be the most fulfilling, pleasurable sexual experience. I can tell you that one from firsthand experience. I'm sure everyone has had some of those experiences where you're just doing it to get it done and over with. Like nobody wants that. That's not what we're after. And so allowing yourself to take that off the table, just connecting, just being with one another can really help to relight the fire and create a little bit more safety inside of your relationship. I'm going to throw it over to Lex to share something that she's got for a small idea.
So again, I address things like nutrition, hydration, sleep, thoughts, stress management, and other areas of life with my clients. I invite everyone to pick one of those areas where they feel that they have neglected themselves the most and take SCA, small, consistent action, one thing. Is it a glass of water every day? Is it starting to do 10 squats a day? What is something? And then put it on your calendar, because your brain is going to want you to forget about the new thing until it's a habit. Remind yourself to do it daily. But what I also want you to add is, while you're doing that, to pay attention to your thoughts. And if you're doing it just to do it, or if you're like, I have to get done and over with this, or if you are doing it in a self-loving way.
Awesome. Great tip. Kemby, I know you got something to share too.
Yeah. Trying to pick one. I would say kind of back to the sex expectations, but just expectations that a lot of women have. And I don't know if anyone's ever had this experience. I've had this experience of like, you get a massage, or you do something really nice for yourself, and it feels like a drop in the bucket. Like the hour goes by and you're like, I need 100 more of those. Like that's how depleted I am. I need 100 more of those. And I know a lot of women are at this point where their tank is really low. And so when you have something that feels good, you may not even know. Like I remember when I was really at my low, I couldn't even think of something that brought me joy. But maybe for me, it was an iced tea that I would go get at lunch during work for myself. I would pay the $5. I would go get this fresh brewed iced tea with lemon. And it was my step one towards really dropping the expectations of, doing all the things for everybody else. Like you said, Christy, kind of getting to the point where I could now allow myself to spend time, and I would do it first thing. I would do something for myself first thing in the morning or during my day, not wait until 9, 10 o'clock at night where there was nothing left. So I would just say, start to build that joy reserve, start to build that tank back up, whatever it is, some tiny small thing that makes you feel treasured, that makes you feel supported, that you can do for yourself. Start doing that, and it'll snowball from there. One little thing you can do for yourself, ideally every single day, that moves that needle, that rebuilds that tank, that energy support that you have. Even if you can't think of anything, one small thing like a song that really makes you smile, and just start doing something, and even thinking about what you want to do just for you with no other expectation for anyone else, is a great place to start.
It's not always easy, but it is absolutely always worth it to take a little bit of time and space to care for yourself. I wanted to share really quickly for anybody listening who wants to dive into, we talked about a lot of topics that I talk about on my podcast a lot. So I just wanted to point you in that direction. If you want to dive deeper into the conversation about sex expectations, about relationships, I really talk on my show about relationships with other people, but spoiler alert, it's about the relationship we have with yourself. So I'm tackling a whole bunch of different topics this season that impact our relationships with other, but how you can take responsibility and how you can shift it, even if your partner doesn't appear to be willing or able to make a change. This is something that you can do for yourself and for your relationship. Another resource that I absolutely have to share is the book called Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. It is an amazing, amazing resource for getting a little bit of a better understanding about about your sex drive, about how you work, about it truly is an adventure in self-discovery, and it is about sex, and it's also about this relationship that you have with yourself. So it is an amazing tool. I highly, highly recommend it. And I also just want to say this is an inner journey, right? That we've been speaking about. This is the inner work. This is for you. And you don't have to go it alone. There are people out there that have been walking this road that would be thrilled to support you. You have 3 of them inside of this room right here. And we would love to invite you to reach out if what we have said, if you'd like to dive a little bit deeper, explore a little bit more, please reach out. And I'm going to give Lex and Kemby an opportunity to share uh, for a brief moment if they have any resources that they want to share on this live. But I want to invite you to reach out, because while it is your own inner journey, you don't have to do it alone. And there are so many ways and places and people that are willing and ready and would love to help you navigate this with more ease and grace. And so we just invite you to do that. Lex, share with us if you have anything that you wanted to share as we start wrapping up.
Yeah, another thing besides your podcast is my YouTube channel. I talk about women's health, all the things that I share with my clients, I share in that channel. All my whole journey. I've been in, like I said, 20 years of experience, overweight, underweight, injured, trained in amateur bodybuilding, kickboxing, boxing. I've had thyroid issues. I've made all the mistakes. I made all the right choices. But that led me to 20 years of experience and knowledge. And I share all that information on my channel. It's called Feeling at a 10 with Lex Bucco, because I want women to feel like they're at a 10 all the time. So that would be my resource.
Awesome. And I'll say whatever links and resources we share, we will make sure that we put the links and everything in the comments or in the show notes or wherever you're watching this. We'll make sure that we have the links provided for you so that you can go and check those out with ease. Kemby, share with us what you've got.
Yeah, I will. I'll share my link to my Facebook group. I have really a fabulous supportive community of women going through perimenopause and menopause, where I share lots of free trainings just to give holistic support. So I talk a lot about, not only physical, medical stuff, but the whole body, mind, spirit, holistic connection for women who are making this shift and making this journey through perimenopause so they can look and feel like themselves again. So feel free to come join us.
Amazing. So as we conclude this conversation, I hope that you have found some nuggets. I hope that you will take just one of the action steps and start with that today. Could be any which one that resonated most with you. I'd love to invite you to allow yourself to really receive any support that you need, to allow yourself the pleasure, to allow yourself the nurturing, the love, the peace, the happiness that is truly your intended state of being. Just allow yourself to bring it all into your life. And I invite you to ask yourself, what is the most nurturing thing that you can do for yourself today, right now, here, right this moment, as you're even watching? What is that most nurturing thing that you can do? And then I invite you to put down the phone or the computer and go and do it. We love you. Thank you so much for joining our conversation, and we would love your feedback. So if you have questions, if you have feedback, if you'd like to let us know what landed, if you'd love to just share a little bit more of your experience, again, we invite you to do that, because the more stories we hear, the more conversations we have, the more normal we can all feel in going through this process. So thank you all so much. I love you guys. Let's go do some epic shit, shall we?
Thank you so much,
Bye.
Lex.
Bye.